little princess fireball here. Can shoot physics. Press the translate, which I can't switch right now. And I can switch over to top down by hitting space. I can move in top down, and now I can have a targeted effect by clicking. Get it to throw fireballs, but if I hit space bar, the purpose of this, it unlocks my mouse, and it's now top down, and it moves to wherever I'm clicking. If I hit space bar again, it locks my mouse, and we go back into third person. So I can just toggle back and forth. And if you want to see how I did that, it's really just a matter of I have two cameras. Well, two virtual cameras. So I got one set up as a top down, and the other camera set up as a third person. That I don't need. And then really on this character, animator wise, I just have a blend tree with the strafes, move forward, move back, and idle. This stuff I've put in, obviously there's no logic to it yet, but if I hit the trigger of, well, I guess I can show you that. There's no logic in the code yet on to trigger this stuff off. But if I trigger fireball, it just does that. If I trigger the ground fire, she does that. And logic wise, we just have a character controller, and we have more or less have two states. We have just a get axis vector and a simple move, space self. We get the direction of the camera, and we just kind of lock up the mouse, and we set the cameras. Nothing really crazy here, but if I hit the space bar, I do more or less the same thing, but I stop getting the camera direction. I swap the controller to move in world space instead of self space, and I look in the movement direction, so I'm not looking into the camera direction anymore, and I unlock the mouse, switch cameras. Pretty simplistic. So we want to shoot fireballs, and we're going to do a couple different fireballs. So here I have a fireball. I'm going to get rid of the logic on it. So it is literally just a fireball. Looks like that. That's all it does. Just a particle. And if I give it an FSM, and I can translate it, and we'll go to speed of like say 30 per second every frame. I'm also going to raycast. You could do trigger colliders and stuff like that. I'm going to do raycast and colliders. I like them better personally. And if we hit, then we have hit something. And if we have hit something, well, we want to destroy self. And we also want to create, I've got a couple explosions here. Where's my explosions? Alright. Here is just a basic explosion particle. Again, there's no logic on it. And I want to create that explosion. And I'm going to use myself as a spawn point. Make sure to put these in order. And then I'm also going to copy this destroy self and place it in this one. And I'm going to give it a, we'll say a 4-second. So it's only going to last 4 seconds or destroys itself, or if it hits something, it'll do that. Right, so this is our translating one. So there we go. Now here's another one, only I put a sphere collider and a rigid body on it. And all we're going to do in this one is do a collision event. So if we have collided, and normally I would store the collider, you know, past damage or whatever the case is, but we're not worried about damage right now. We also want that same explosion. So I'm literally just going to do more or less that same thing. And we'll add the destroy. And I'll also put it in this guy. So there is our fireball with physics, and we have a fireball with translation. So what we need, I'm going to work on these two kind of differently here. So let's say get mouse button down. If we get the left mouse button, we want to shoot. And all that's going to be is animator trigger. We're going to say shoot the fireball, do a weight for like, I don't know, 0.75. And then you might as well just go back. So we need what we really need is in the fireball right here. I've already got a vent here. I'll delete that event so we can see it. Is all we want is to, as we come along, say right, pretty close I guess to there, we're going to send a vent. And we want to send an event called fireball. And now we need something to catch that event. So we're going to use that same string that we just used, like that. And we need to create object. And we need our fireball to create. Well, first we'll do this one. We need a spawn point. And we're going to store this created thing so that we can do some things to it. And I think I've already added it. I didn't put it anywhere, but in the left hand. So in the left hand I made an empty. Mind you, you could just use the left hand. I like to use objects. So I created an object and it's just on their hand, right? Like it's really not even in a good spot. Like I should probably move it around so it's a little better. But that object is going to be our marker, right? It doesn't contain any logic, but it's going to be our marker. So our spawn point, I suppose I should just use that, is that marker. Now, we need to transform direction. We wish to go over to our camera which is going to be this guy for now, and we want to transform one on its Z. So we're getting which way our camera is facing. And then we're going to use look at direction. So we're going to tell our created object that we want to look at the direction, not every frame. And that's it. So just by hitting play now, oh, we got something a little weird. And that's because I'm supposed to use the camera. There we go. Probably bring that rail bigger for the explosions, but I'm not worried about that. Point is, we have a fireball. Very simple. Right, so now what if we wanted to do physics? Well, let's just look at, let's create this guy instead. And instead of this look at direction, we don't care about that, but we still want the direction that the camera is facing. And we're going to take that direction that it's facing, the look direction, we're going to multiply it by a value, say 30. And then we just want to add force, or you can even set velocity, either or. And we're adding force to our created object at the vector of look direction, world space. And I'm going to use impulse. Right, so we're getting the direction of the camera, we're multiplying it, and that's our force. And beyond that, you see now how they kind of lob. Just a tiny collider. I need to make the collider bigger. But yeah. Pretty cool nonetheless. So the other thing I have is I created a thing that looks like this. So this is just a green circle. Isn't that cool? And really all it is an empty object with a light, a spotlight, sitting up in the sky looking down on it. Right? So we're going to use that. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give that a little bit of logic. Let's just do a destroy self and give it a timer of like, I don't know, 3 seconds. All right. So we have here a big fireball, and it's the same thing as the other fireballs, but I scaled it up double, and we need to have it go to a certain point, because we're going to use the top down. So we're going to click on an area, which you also could do this in the third person as well. I think it looks cooler in the top down, but we're going to click on the area and we want it to go to that area. So the first thing we're going to do, so we're going to go to this thing here, and we're going to say, okay, let's take this same get button down, but if we're in the top down, then we're also going to shoot. But we're going to do something much different. So the first thing we want to do is smooth look at. And before we even do that, we need a mouse pick. We need something to even look at. So we're going to do a mouse pick, and we're going to get, I'll use this variable called hit point. And we're going to look at hit point. And we're going to give this a finished. And once it finishes, once we're looking there, we're going to set ground fire. And then we can wait for, probably a little longer, 4 seconds, and go back. The other thing we could do is create object. We're going to create our mark at hit point. Now you don't have to create the mark, I just think it looks cool, right? So right now we have, essentially, if I hit left mouse button, we shoot a fireball. And if I hit space bar, we go to our top down, I get my mouse, and now if I click, we're going to do that. Right, so now we just need to say, okay, well, how do we get the fireballs from there? So if we look at this guy, this is what we're going to do. We're going to create a whole new, because I think I did some events, but I need to replace those. So this here is essentially, we climb up, and that's what this event is. And we do 4 times, and then we do a big one. Right, so I think what we'll do is we'll say small, and again small, and then big. And I'll hit apply. So now, in our little catcher here, we have 2 more. We have small, and we have big. And what we need to do is we need to create an object in both of these cases. And only we're not going to be using this one. We're actually going to be using a different one. In fact, we will even call it small, and this one we'll call big. I might as well make those over here as input so that we can get them over here. I can fill it up. Alright, so the spawn point fireball, which is fine. We can still spawn it in our hand. And we're going to store it. Now what we need to do is we need to tell the fireball where to go. And there's numerous ways to do this. So if I get FSM vector 3, so I should probably name these things. So this is animator, this one's move. So if we look at the move and say, okay, we have a hit point that we are casting at. Now, the radius of that circle we made we'll say it's 1. So if I take that radius, even though this will technically be a square, but I can say, okay, well, we have -1 to 1 on the x, -1 to 1 on the z, and we can vector 3 add x, y, z. So we're going to take the hit point and we're going to add to the x and to the z. And now we can tell this thing that that's where it needs to go, right? So I think what we'll do is we will set event property, and we'll call it target. It is a vector 3, and it's going to be hit point. Move to the bottom, and then we're going to send event, which we haven't made this on the fireball yet, so we still need to make this. On the created, we'll have an FSM. We'll call it fire, and we need a new event to send. We'll call it fire as well. And that's it, right? And now we actually could do that same thing over here. Well, I guess we should pretty much copy that whole thing. Well, actually, no, we really don't want the random on the big one. The big one can actually be a lot more accurate. So there we go. Now we need to make those things, and we need to know, right, that's my fireball big. We'll duplicate him. Actually, no, we won't duplicate him yet. We'll make the logic first. So we said we have an FSM named fire, and we said we have an event called fire. And if we get this event, we get event properties, and we get target, which is a vector. And then all I'm going to do is I am going to get position of our world. This can be our start. And because I want this to be homing, I want to make sure it gets, everywhere it needs to go. What we're going to do is we're going to force it to go to that target. So I am going to lerp a vector 3. Or if you want, you can also animate it as well. We're going to go from start to target, and this will be with a variable called time. And we need to obviously create a new vector here. So we need to set position of ourselves, world space, every frame to this set position. And more importantly, this time, every frame per second. So if we add 1, that means this lerping will go from start to finish over 1 second, right? Is that too fast, not fast enough? We can always adjust this. You go slower, this will move slower. You take this up to like 5, this will rocket like a missile, right? And then once we're done, right, like you could do float compare if you wanted to. move to the bottom. You could also put on collision events and stuff like this too. But let's say time is greater than 1. You know, we could create let's create that at fireball big, and then we can destroy ourselves. Just like that. Right, so now if I prefab that, and then let's take this guy and cut a size down and prefab him again. Let's call this one the small one. There we go. Get rid of that. So we come along and we have fireball small and we have fireball big. So like I said, so now here I'm going to expand this out. And let's go to our third person. So we're trucking along and we click over here. Now we have that. Right, so now it's a matter of how fast you want those fireballs to move. Even that random range could actually be opened up a bit too. Right, so if we look at, say, the fireball small, and say, you know what, that speed was just too slow. Let's double it. Right, and then fireball big. Let's make them a little slower, but let's just take it up a bit. Say 1.5. Oh, and under fireball small, obviously that radius of 1 I think was too little. So let's go with, oh yeah, he's not on here. That logic was on the princess. Right, so let's go with 2. There we go. And just because I'm a nice guy, let's go maximum. Alright, so there, now we have little princess fireball here. Can shoot physics. Plus the translate, which I can't switch right now. And I can switch over to top down by hitting space. I can move in top down, and now I can have a targeted effect by clicking. And there we have that. Right, and I can click anywhere. And I can't move, I can't change direction. Like the whole thing's kind of like this, almost like this animated thing now with the controls and everything. But it looks pretty cool. Fireballs to the extreme.